William Finley as the prototype for the modern conservation activist. He was an incredible naturalist, scientist, advocate, writer, photographer, educator, and adventurer.
William Finley really was one of the first people in Oregon to speak out for our bird populations, and his work was instrumental in preventing a lot of the species that we now consider iconic Oregon birds from extinction. William Finley became interested in wildlife at a fairly young age. A lot of people, when they think about Portland today, and they don't realize that in the 1890s, Portland was a pretty wild place. When you look at his photographs and you think about where they are at, physically, a lot of them were taken at places like what is today HURST Park, or on Markham Hill, which is now completely built over with OHSU. So he was in and around birds and wildlife, even growing up in Portland. Early nature photographers were capturing wildlife in very staged settings. They would capture and domesticate animals, sometimes even use dead stuffed animals and make them appear to be alive because that's easier. The potential consequences of these really staged wildlife photographs is that they often portrayed animals as tamer than they actually were, as more approachable and willing to be interacted with, which is dangerous. Wild animals are not usually welcoming to human interaction. In their early photographs, William Finley and Herman Bowman go to great lengths to document the process of their photography to prove that these are not fake photographs. And so you can see the result of that is that we have these amazing photographs, basically the behind the scenes of their process. The transformation that William Finley takes from being just a wildlife enthusiast to a conservationist really happened through his photography.
The more time Finley spent observing and photographing birds, the more he realized the impending threat that unregulated overhunting was having on the once populous bird colonies he visited around the state.
Women's fashion in the 1890s and early 1900s really fetishized bird feathers. You see these really elaborate hats with bird plumes trailing out the back that were really popular with women at that point in time. And the problem with a lot of those hats and the feathers that are collected for them is that the feathers that are the most showy and the most elegant and the most prized will develop during nesting season to attract mates. So in essence, this plume trade was completely disrupting the nesting cycle of these bird populations. He really pushed hard for laws against those plumes that women wore in their hats and bird harvesting. It took Finley and a like-minded group of individuals to go out and actively make these issues visible. One story that's famous about William Finley is that he and some of his assistants actually met this woman who was a famous stage actress. She was coming off stage from her performance and ripped the feathers out of her hat.
Everywhere Finley and Bowman traveled, it seemed the plume hunters were a step ahead. Describing the scene of coming upon a grebe colony days behind the plume hunters, Finley described the sight before them. I saw a grebe mother that had been shot and not been found by the plume hunters, a mother lying dead beside her home. In a small bunch of tules, I saw a grebe baby trying to crawl under its dead mother's wing. Cold, helpless, starving. I can hear him yet. Here was a great cemetery in the silence of the marsh.
One of the lasting legacies of President Roosevelt administration is his dedication to protect and conserve our natural resources. William Finley actively courted the attention of President Roosevelt by sending him photographs, letters, really graphic descriptions of what it looked like where people were harvesting plumes.
Teddy Roosevelt decided to take a couple of months off from being president and travel around the western United States Roosevelt coming into Portland, getting off the train, as the band started to play and all the dignitaries were there, he shouted, "Get me Finley." And Finley came out of the audience and they promptly left and went off to look at photographs of birds.
One of the lasting legacies of William Finley's work is that he worked with President Roosevelt to help establish 3 arch rocks, Klamath and Malheur National Wildlife Refuges.
They also never lost their sense of fun and their sense of irreverency. That's throughout their pictures and their writing. And I think that's something we always need to remember in the modern conservation movement, that we need to have fun. We need to enjoy ourselves. We need to get out there and enjoy what we're trying to protect.